Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we explore entertaining and enlightening discussions of the adventure of life and all things good. From science and technology to history and philosophy to leadership and success. We hope to give you a better understanding of the world and skills for everyone to pursue their own adventure.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we talk about all things good in the pursuit of the adventure of life. I'm Rafe, and it's a new year, and it's a new buff, but it's the same as the old buff. All the good old buff and none of the bad old buff has been there. And one of the good things is that I'm often joined by Harry, and I am today. Harry, how are you?
Rafe, I'm doing great. And you mentioned that there were some bad things in the buff, and I can't imagine a single bad thing that Bufnagle the podcast brings to the world.
Well, that's why it will appear to be very similar, and you'll have to be really
It'll be almost exactly the same.
Almost. In fact, it'll be so much the same that the casual listener may not recognize it as different, but it will be different. So,
yeah. Well, there you go.
That's where we are. So, but one thing that stays the same, Harry, as you know, we have one of the good things that we have is the great listeners we have out there. We have the world's greatest listeners. They have made us a global top 10% podcast. And for that, we are eternally grateful. If you are new to the podcast, please hit the subscribe button, listen for a whole bunch of times, and then subscribe again. Subscribe on multiple platforms because
give us all of the listens and downloads. Make us look really good.
Make us look, as a statistician, I understand bias very well, and I'm not opposed to it.
As long as it's in my benefit, I think it'll be okay.
Yeah, it's in my best interest. So anyway, tell a friend to listen, and you will get a free episode. And hit the like button, the subscribe button, hit the I want to hear more buff button, and send us an email at bufnagle@bufnagle.com, and we will respond to your questions, sometimes in a matter similar to how God answers prayers. You never know what that's going to mean. But we will get an answer somehow. Harry, you have a little treat for us today. It's something you've been working on for a little bit.
I do. We're back to Bufnagle the book report.
Nice.
Right. So today we're going to be talking about one of the scenes from The Lord of the Rings, written by J.R.R. Tolkien. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the scene at the end of the Fellowship of the Ring, which is the first book of three. So there's 3 books in the series. So to give a little bit of background, It's a fantasy epic by J.R.R. Tolkien, written in 1950s. I think that's right.
Just after World War II.
Right. And it's considered to be the prototype for high fantasy written today. Right. So you have kings and elves and dwarves and fantasy creatures and power struggles and good versus evil and a lot of Western civilization hero story tropes.
Yeah, and they live in a place called Middle Earth, which is kind of like Earth, but it's not really Earth. And it's not. I always thought, my brother was reading this when I was a kid, and I always thought Middle Earth was like halfway below ground.
It's kind of in the middle of Earth.
Yeah, but it's not Middle Earth there. It's just called Middle Earth. And there's all sorts of, like you said, there's a lot of strange fantasy creatures, elves and dwarves and orcs.
Halflings, hobbits.
Hobbits, yeah, and hobbits are kind of like people, but they're shorter, but they have really big feet.
And they live longer. Yeah, and they eat a lot.
Yeah.
So particularly with Lord of the Rings, it tells the story of the one ring of power, right? Wrought in secret in evil to consume and control all of the other rings for all of the races of Middle Earth. And the series for The Lord of the Rings tells the story of how the ring and its ring bearer, Frodo Baggins, who, if you're familiar with the story of The Hobbit, is the nephew of Bilbo Baggins, the main character of that story. And then it tells the story of the ring and its journey across Middle Earth to be destroyed in Mount Doom.
So Frodo is a hobbit. He is nephew of The Hobbit, which was kind of a prequel book.
Yep.
And it tells the story. His job is he told to destroy the ring? He is told that that's his job?
He is more or less thrust responsibility upon him to take the ring to the mountain and destroy it.
So it's a ring, and it has power, and that's kind of a secret thing. And of course, everything's allegory, right? So that's or at least it's either allegory or metaphor, but those things kind of go together. But so it's a ring and has power, and if you put on the ring, something magical happens.
Yeah, if you put on the ring, you turn invisible, but the evil Sauron, so who's the devil, Satan, the personification of evil, can see you and can feel the ring's power. The ring kind of has a mind of its own because Sauron built the ring. So we're basically going to go with the ring is evil, but it gives you certain powers when you wield it.
And so it's dangerous to put the ring like I don't want to say it's a good and a bad, but there's two sides to that coin, right? You put the ring on, you become invisible, but you become invisible to the mortals that are around you. But
right.
Evil now can see through you, right, and see where you are. And so I don't want to say it's a good and a bad. It's probably both bad, but it can. That's its nature, later, right? That's its nature.
It's its nature, and the ultimate question, especially for this episode, is going to be: can evil be used for good?
Right. Okay. That's where we're going to be going here. So at the end of the first book, there's a character that becomes enamored with the ring, and that leads to his downfall.
That's right. So the character we're going to be talking about is Boromir. Right. He is one of the members of the Fellowship of the Ring. Right. So when Frodo is thrust with responsibility of the ring, he travels with his buddy Samwise Gamgee and two other hobbits, Merry and Pippin, at the request of Gandalf. So they go to the Elven Kingdom of Rivendell. They also meet Aragorn, who is the rightful king of men. And a council is formed there, and it's joined by representation of other major races and creatures of Middle-earth. So Gimli is representing the dwarves, Legolas is representing the elves, and Boromir has also decided to come to the council. He has traveled to the council to represent the men of Gondor, right? So mankind is kind of split into factions across Middle-earth. The biggest, I guess, country and area would be Gondor.
So Boromir is a man from Gondor, and there's all these fantasy creatures, and they have been chosen. They come together for this task of taking the ring, quite literally into enemy territory.
Into enemy territory, and more or less their purpose is to guard Frodo in his quest. Their job is to ensure that Frodo destroys the ring,
and he has to take the ring and drop it into the lava. So it's lava, right? So
right, yeah,
okay.
It'll destroy anything. So basically, a little bit more of the background of the story before we get to the very end of the Fellowship of the Ring and the beginning of the Two Towers, which are the first and second books, respectively. We won't be talking about the third book here. So they travel across the mountains, but they are denied by outside forces out of their control, weather, evil, difficult, treacherous conditions. They then travel into the Mines of Moria, where Gandalf is seemingly lost in battle forever. So Gandalf dies protecting the rest of the Fellowship.
And Gandalf is a wizard.
Gandalf is a wizard. He's lived a very long time. No one really knows how long. So Gandalf is more or less I don't want to say God, but he has existed for a very long time. So he knows a whole lot.
And he's really wise, and he's just the wise guy, right? He's the guy who knows what's going on.
Yep. And so I'm actually going to read a little bit of the synopsis here from the Two Towers about what has happened at the end of the Fellowship of the Ring. So it has now become necessary for the Fellowship to decide whether they should turn east towards Mordor, right, go and continue to destroy the ring, or go on with Boromir to the aid of Minas Tirith, which is the chief city of Gondor. And it's become clear that the ring bearer was resolved to continue his hopeless journey to the land of the enemy, and Boromir has attempted to seize the ring by force.
Yeah. So the Mordor is the bad place. That's enemy territory, but that's where they have to go to destroy the ring. And Boromir wants to grab the ring and go to Minas. How do you say it?
Minas Tirith.
Minas. It's Minas Tirith, Tirith, right? Minas Tirith.
There you go. You got it.
Look at that. All right. So, that's a stronghold of men. And that's where his father is a king, or
Yes, his father is the king of Gondor. Yep.
Isn't he king regent though? Isn't he like?
Yes, he's not quite king, right? He's kind of filling in for the space until the true king arrives.
Yeah, the true king, right? And that's part of the issue is who is the true king. So Boromir is going to Boromir gets I'll say enamored with the ring, and he starts to see that the ring. He starts to think, well, maybe the ring would be good for us because we can disappear with it, and then I could sneak in and do
sure, or the ring can also, because mankind and elves and dwarves are so enamored by its power, right? It gives the bearer power. Boromir thinks that the ring can grant him this power, and men will flock to him, and everything will be better because then he can use the ring for good. So, at the end of the Fellowship of the Ring, Boromir finds Frodo alone, and they have a conversation and not necessarily a meeting, but a happenstance together.
Mm-hmm.
Boromir confronts Frodo, and at this time Boromir is starting to be consumed by the ring and the idea that it can be used for good, and fending off the armies of Mordor. He says, "Is it not a strange fate that we should suffer so much fear and doubt for so small a thing? The world is changing, you say. Minas Tirith will fall if the ring lasts." So Boromir's losing hope here. He says, "But why? Certainly if the ring were with the enemy. But why if it were with us?" And Frodo's response is, "Were you not at the council? Because we cannot use it, and what is done with it turns to evil." So already we have this. Frodo recognizes that he is the ring bearer. It is not his job to use the ring for good or for evil. All his job is to go take the ring, take sin and death and everything else that goes along with it, and destroy it. And Boromir thinks, well, no, I'm a good man. I'm good-hearted, and I can use the ring for good.
Well,
so yeah, go ahead.
Well, and you can see this if you are a grown-up, right? You can start seeing, that. If you're looking from the outside, you see this all the time with people who say, just give me, Star Wars and the Emperor, just give me a little bit of power. I'll do this thing. I'll get everything straight, and then we'll go back to it, right? And then I'll give up power at the end.
If you give me enough power, I will make things right.
Right. And it's over and over and over and over and over again. That's how tyrants work. And you can see that Boromir is getting drawn into this illusion that he can somehow stay chaste, even with all the power.
Yeah. So his major paragraph here, he says, "So you go on, true-hearted men, they will not be corrupted. We do not desire the power of wizard lords," so like Gandalf, "only strength to defend ourselves, strength in a just cause. And behold, in our need, chance brings to light the ring of power. It is a gift, I say, a gift to the foes of Mordor. It is mad not to use it, to use the power of the enemy against him. The fearless, the ruthless, these alone will achieve victory. What could not a warrior do in this hour, a great leader? What could not Aragorn do? Or if he refuses, why not Boromir? The ring would give me power of command. How I would drive the host of Mordor, and all men would flock to my banner."
And I hear that kind of statement, and I believe that he fully believes that he's doing good.
Why would you not? He's protecting his people.
And I think that's how you get corrupted, is you don't recognize that what you're saying or what you're doing is actually is actually corrupt. It's a corrupt thought. And that's where sin creeps in. And Satan's constantly doing that to you, telling you well, everybody else is bad, but if you do this bad thing, it would be good. And and all sin has this allure, right? In the garden, doesn't Satan say to Eve, "Look at this fruit. It's beautiful. It's great to look at." And I'm sure
everything.
And it tastes wonderful. So it would be good, right? So that's a piece about sin, is it always it never looks bad. People don't say, "I got an idea. Let's go do this thing." No, terrible things will result. No. They say, "I'm going to do this and good will result. And therefore it will be good." And they don't see how they've been corrupted.
That's right. And Boromir reflects this in his next statement. He says, "They tell us to throw it away. I do not say destroy it. That might be well if reason could show any hope of doing so. And it does not." So Boromir's already saying, like, it's not possible to get rid of this. You can't get rid of sin. You can't get rid of death. There's no hope for us. Why are you throwing this away? We need to use it for our purposes to drive away evil and drive away the enemy forces.
That's how all sin goes, and that's how power goes. And what do they say? Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. That should be the name of this podcast, really. That and live excellently, because that is a constant theme. And I guess I heard that when I was a kid, but I haven't recognized that. I never really saw it as much when I was a kid that I do now. It is absolutely everywhere, and everybody's clamoring for power. And I guess I was talking to a colleague at work, and we were talking about George Washington and how George Washington turned down the opportunity to be king.
Right.
And this woman did not grow up here in the U.S., and she was flabbergasted to hear that even was a thing. And I said, at least the American, and certainly generally the Western view of power is that the only people who should be allowed to have power are those who don't want to wield it. And immediately Boromir here is violating that trope. As you can say, he says, "Give me the power, I'll be all right." Just like Palpatine, "Give me the power, we'll be all right." You got to be like Washington in that sense and just back away and say, I don't want it.
That's right. And this conversation between Boromir and Frodo goes back and forth. And throughout this time, Frodo is starting to realize, whoa, Boromir wants the ring, and he's not going to stop. The conversation started out innocently, wondering about what we can do, and now he's gripping Frodo's shoulder. He's saying, "You can just give it to me, give it up. We don't have to tell anyone." He said, "Why not be free of your doubt and fear? You can lay the blame on me if you will. You can say that I was too strong and I took it by force." So now he's past the point of, maybe we can use it for good, and we're on to just give it to me.
Just give it to me.
I need the power.
And we'll use evil and deception to back it up. I mean, so now it's, you can see really quickly all these pieces of how sin works just in this conversation and these thought patterns.
That's right. And it really comes to a head here as Boromir attempts to take the ring. So when he attempts to take the ring, Frodo realizes what happens. He quickly takes it out and slips it onto his finger, and he turns invisible. And immediately Boromir can't find him. He can't see him. He says, "Curse you and all halflings to death and to darkness." All right. So at this point, he is totally consumed by sin, totally consumed by greed and power and lust and all of gluttony, all your 7 sins, probably minus sloth here because he's doing something about it. And then Tolkien writes, "Then catching his foot upon a stone, he fell sprawling and lay upon his face. For a while he was as still as if his own curse had struck him down. And then suddenly he wept." So he's weeping. He's already acknowledged what he has done is wrong after seeking out power and corruption and greed. And now he's weeping. He recognizes his mistake.
And I think it's not what is deliberate. I say not disdeliberate, undeliberate, deliberate,
not deliberate.
Yeah, it's he caught his foot on a stone, and anybody who's read the Psalms recognizes that's got to be from Psalm 91. "He shall give his angels charge over thee to keep thee in all thy ways, and they shall bear thee up in their hands, lest you dash your foot against a stone." And what has happened is Boromir has forsaken that. And what does he do? He dashes his foot against a stone, and he has not been borne up because he has turned away. Sin is the turning away from God, and he has done that. He is now no longer on the path. His aim is not true, and he dashes his foot against a stone. Now he finds him on his face, and he makes a realization at that point.
He does, and he dashes away with tears in his eyes, and he says, "What have I done?" He says, "What have I said? What have I done? Frodo, Frodo, come back. A madness took me, but it has passed. Come back." So he's already acknowledged his mistake, and he's now in shame and in guilt. Boromir has returned to the camp. He has a brief conversation with Aragorn about where Frodo is and recognizes that they have a conversation. Aragorn kind of realizes that Boromir's not quite telling the truth. There's something else going on here.
Have you eaten from that tree I told you not to eat from?
No, it wasn't me.
No, it wasn't me. It was the woman you put here, sir. All right, yes.
Exactly. But at this point in time, orcs have now come to attack the party. And the party has now split. So Aragorn has charged Boromir with protecting Merry and Pippin. Remember, there are 4 hobbits. There's Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin.
And Merry is a boy. It's Merry.
Right. Short for Meriadoc.
Oh, not Merryweather. Okay, but that's okay. But Merry and Pippin are 2 other hobbits, right?
2 other hobbits who have stolen their way from the Shire into this great adventure. So they are being protected by Boromir, and Aragorn is going after Sam to look for Frodo and Sam. However, the book kind of ends there. Fellowship of the Ring ends on a cliffhanger.
With this battle with the orcs looming.
Right. And what ends up happening is we never see Boromir's death other than in the movie. We don't know what's really going on. However, we do know that the party has split. Aragorn hears Boromir's horn. So for reference, Boromir carries with him a war horn, right, to summon armies and men to his aid.
Yeah,
I'm sure it sounds exactly like that. The description we find Boromir away from everyone else. Merry and Pippin are not with him, but Aragorn finds him. So a mile away, in a little glade not far from the lake, Aragorn found Boromir. He was sitting with his back to a great tree as if he were resting. But Aragorn saw that he was pierced with many black-feathered arrows. His sword was still in hand, but it was broken near the hilt. His horn cloven in 2 was at his side. Many orcs slain, piled about him and at his feet. So he's dying. Boromir is dying. And at this point in time, he has shifted his mindset. He is no longer consumed by the ring and acknowledges his mistake. He says, I have tried to take the ring from Frodo. I am sorry, and I have paid. Farewell, Aragorn. Go to Minas Tirith and save my people. I have failed.
Wow.
Please help me. I have made a great mistake. And Aragorn says, so we're going to read the book here, and then we're going to discuss what happens in the movie. Aragorn says, no, taking his hand and kissing his brow, you have conquered. Few have gained such a victory. Be at peace. Minas Tirith shall not fall. And Boromir smiles and dies. So Aragorn has consoled Boromir. However, in the book, I would argue that the book is very, very good for allegory and acknowledging death, but the movie is even better. Because in the movie, Aragorn again finds Boromir with his back against a tree, and Boromir again asks Aragorn for his forgiveness. But he says one line that's very, very important. He says, I would have followed you, my brother, my captain, my king, and dies.
So Boromir recognizes the error of his ways. He asks for forgiveness, and he recognizes Aragorn as king. And that's
he recognizes Aragorn as true king of men, right? Because remember, Boromir is more or less in line succession for regent king, right? His father is Denethor, who's currently serving as king of Gondor, right? Aragorn's going to come in and be king of all men throughout Middle-earth.
Right. But Boromir recognizes Aragorn as the one true king.
Right? That's right. In his moment of death, Boromir recognized Aragorn as true king. So, why is this important? So there's a couple of, I'm going to say there's 4 things that are very important for Boromir's death that we can apply to our lives as men. 1, Boromir represents what man goes through on a very regular basis. We are sinners, and we make mistakes very often. We can try really hard to not make mistakes, but it's going to happen.
Right. And so you can see it. The movie does a good job of him. Like, you can see when he's doing that, he kind of starts off making a decent argument, but then he gets evil, right? I mean, the wrath starts coming through and rage comes through, and he can't keep that suppressed. And he falls to sin.
That's right. And secondly, what happens here when he's talking to Aragorn is he acknowledges his sin. He admits what he's done wrong, and he feels a lot of guilt and shame, as all of us do, right? Like, oh no, I've lied to a whole bunch of people, or I've stolen a whole bunch of things, and I've broken one of the 10 Commandments, and I feel guilty and shameful about this. But importantly, he is not consumed by his guilt and shame. That is the most important thing.
Well, and we've talked about that before, is that Satan, as the deceiver, he will entice you to sin. He'll say, it'll be great. Look at all this wonderful thing you'll do. And then when you recognize the error, we talked about this in Frankenstein. Frankenstein builds the monster. And then after he builds the monster, he feels just terrible remorse for that. And so Boromir feels remorse now, but Satan at that point says, oh man, you suck. You are a bad person. There's no way you're ever going to be redeemed. And then that consumes you. He gets you into the hole, and then he sucks you in the more you struggle. And that's the nature of sin.
That's right. And the third thing is, 3 and 4 are interrelated. So I'll say them at the same time. Third is he pays his penance, right? He does this by defending Merry and Pippin. And the movie, again, does a great job of this because it shifts immediately to Merry and Pippin about to be slaughtered by orcs. And to their aid comes Boromir. Right, so he defends the weak. That is his penance. He defends the weak. And fourth is he admits his sins to the king. Right, and he admits that Aragorn is king. That is more or less, that is a confession.
I was going to say, that looks to me a lot like the idea of Catholic confession, and I think that's not that's not undeliberate, right?
Yeah, right. It's almost as if Tolkien and C.S. Lewis had this allegory thing going on.
Yeah, go figure. All right, so Boromir's dead, and they have a funeral for him.
They have a more or less not really a funeral, right? But he is born upon the rafts that the Fellowship was traveling down a river to a falls where they would make their next move, either Minas Tirith or Mordor. And they're at that splitting off point. So what they do is they were traveling on 3 rafts. They take one of the rafts, they put Boromir into the raft, and they send him away.
They commit him to his destiny. So, right. And later on, though, his body floats down the river.
Right. His body floats down the river and actually appears to his brother, Faramir. So his younger brother sees his older brother dead in the raft, and notes that his face nearly glows and it looks like he is happier in death than in life.
Too bad that's not allegory too.
A shame, right? But kind of all of this to say, Boromir's death shows the implications and the importance of what I saw as I was watching the movie, an allegory for good living, for confession, and for last rites. And I think that you've got some notes on that as well.
Well, there are 3 components of last rites that are, well, I mean, it's a complicated thing because whether or not you are in good standing, whether or not you have been excommunicated, whether or not you're a believer, not a believer. I mean, there's all sorts of ways. Okay, but different components of last rites are used in different situations. But in generally, there's 3 of them. The first is addressing death, recognition that you're going to. That you are dying, and that's a thing you're going to do. There is confession that takes place in last rites, and then there is viaticum, or maybe it's viaticum, however you say it in Latin. It essentially means food for the journey, and it can actually mean in medieval times a viaticum is actually the stuff you need for your journey. So it's money, it's your papers, it's a clean shirt in case you meet the mayor of the town. It's
sure. Yep.
It's your toothbrush, right? All these things are your viaticum. But in the Catholic sense of last rites, viaticum is communion that you are given if you are competent to do that without choking. So those are the main components of last rites.
And we see a lot of these components through the scene with Boromir, right? So he is addressing death. He is on his deathbed, laid up against the tree. That is very apparent. Second, he does have a confession to his king, right? He says, more or less, God, I have failed. I have messed up. And God says back to him, no, you have not failed. You have conquered. Be at peace. So I am here. You are forgiven, right? Because of the things you have done.
And that's the last words you hear when you leave confession is go in peace. Right. I mean, so these things are, I mean, I think we all knew there's a lot of allegory in here, but it's interesting how these little scenes are pictures of other things outside of the full gamut of the trilogy.
Right. And then the third thing is the viaticum, right? So this is not necessarily addressed in the scene with Boromir. However, when the Fellowship is leaving Rivendell, right, they met with the elves, they had their council, they are all giving lembas, which is elven bread that sustains the Fellowship for a very, very long time, which in this sense could also be considered viaticum. It's not necessarily at Boromir's death, but it has already been given to the troop for their journey.
So that it's literally bread for the journey.
Right.
Right. And that's
which they already have. Yep.
Yeah. Right. And so it is it's a very, let's just say it's a book and a series of books that is rich with allegory. And you can see how it is influenced by Tolkien's faith. You have some lessons that you pointed out that you think we should take home from this whole deal.
That's right. I have 6 lessons.
Okay.
The first is you will mess up. Sorry, you're human. You're not perfect. Second is you have the opportunity to make it right. Right? Like do the good things. Go seek the good. That's what this whole podcast is about.
Right.
3, profess your king. Openly, honestly. 4 is seek forgiveness and forgive others. 5, protect others. This is especially something for the men that listen to this podcast. Protect your family, protect your children, protect your community, your country, right?
And your spouse.
6, family.
Yeah.
6 is the truth will set you free and ultimately will give you peace.
That is one, I think that is, we live in, to overuse Zach's overused phrase, we live in the stupidest time ever. And I think that recognition, the truth will set you free. Turn off all those things that are causing your aim to not be true, that are distracting you from where you ought to go. And if you want to do a thing in 2024 to make yourself better, focus on the good that focus on the true, focus on the beautiful, get yourself right with the truth. And that is a slippery thing to get to because it's so easy to be distracted by things that look like they may be true, but they are, what do we want to say there? They're just gold plated, or maybe even just
because it feels good in the moment doesn't mean that it's going to feel good for a long time, for eternity.
Right. Or it's going to even look good, or it's even going to do good, or any of those things so that's a thing that is, the good is the path you take to become the person you were made to be. And that is ask yourself, what were you made to be? And is the thing I'm doing, whatever it is the thing I'm doing consistent with that aim?
I think that's right. And I think what we've talked about here in this podcast is Boromir sees his aim in the end.
Right.
Right. He acknowledges that his job is to protect. His job is to recognize who the true king is and how can he bring those things together for the greater purpose of the Fellowship and the greater purpose of leading them to good.
Yeah. So it's Harry. Thank you for this. It is, we could make, I have a feeling there will be more of these things coming up from these wonderful books and the movies that were made from them. And we look forward to having a wonderful 2024. The rest of you out there, I have to encourage you to go seek the good, live virtuously, and flourish, and enjoy the adventure of life.